What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at Le Poussin Rouge, and today we are here with Jay of Prison. Thank you so much for your time today, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, it's awesome to have you here. Still Alive is your latest record. Do you just want to give a rundown on how the making of this record was, the recording, and all that fun stuff was?
So our guitarist is a jack of all trades. So he can write and record and produce and mix and master. So we did everything in-house because we are an independent band. So it was just a lot of me recording riff ideas on my phone and bringing them to him, and then him turning them into actual songs.
Interesting. Being that everything is so DIY and everything, does that make it like a little bit easier, or is there maybe other outside input for the band that that helps with making music?
No, we had no help, and it was almost impossible to actually pull this off. Like our first record we did independently as well, but that was easy because no one knew who we were, and we weren't really touring at the time, so there wasn't a lot of pressure. And then now that we've been touring for a few years and people know us a little better, there's a lot more that goes into a release now than a few years ago, and we had literally no help putting it together. So it was a challenge and a half. So we just can't wait to finally put it out there and let people enjoy it, because it's just about killed us.
Was there a preconceived idea when making this record, or was there a lot of improvising involved?
Well, we had tons of unreleased music for years, like a huge back catalog of stuff. And then we started writing new music, and we thought we have tons of music just sitting around and we need to put it to good use. So the new record is a mix of brand new songs that we wrote this year and last year, and then unreleased music from like 2014 and 2015 that we had to just completely pick apart and restructure, because who we were 5 years ago, I don't think, if we released the songs as the demos were, I don't think we'd be very confident in them, so we had to overhaul all of them.
There you go. I mean, that'll be cool. Maybe will there be a way people could tell which one is like an older original song from back in the day and which one is like something you wrote with the intention of putting on this record?
I don't think so anymore, because before the older ones were stupid heavy, and then the newer ones were a lot more melodic and more like nu metal, catchy, earwormy. But then when we went back to rewrite some of the older songs, we really breathed that life into them. So now they're inseparable, it surprised me actually how cohesive the record turned out.
There you go. Now, being a vocalist, do you need to hear music in order to come up with lyrics, or is there a time where maybe you have a vocal idea that could help determine the outcome of the music?
I have a weird relationship with vocals as a vocalist. So whenever I listen to a band, the vocals are the last thing that I pay attention to. So I'm very big on rhythm and melody and harmony and patterns. So I write a lot of our music, and I have to start with instrumentals. When I started doing vocals, it was all, I would start with a huge list of lyrics, and then I would bring them to my band and say, like, well, let's write a song based off this. But I think that's totally backwards. If you can breathe, like I write a lot of instrumental music at home, like fingerstyle acoustic, and you're forced to convey emotion without words. Mm-hmm. So I think if you can try to do that musically and then add lyrics on top as sort of like icing, then it floats really well. But if you try to write a song that just sounds like anything with no inspiration and then force a lyrical theme on it, it just sounds really inauthentic.
Yeah, fair enough. Exactly. And I mean, it doesn't matter what you're singing about if the music itself is not very good. I mean, for lack of better words, it doesn't matter what you're singing about. So
I think everything with music has to be inspired. So even like if you want to do a different drum fill, it's like, I'm a big fan of asking the question why. Mm-hmm. Like, and sometimes because it sounds good isn't enough for me.
The word never ends.
Yeah.
Well, what I find unique is you say you always need inspiration. Are you looking outward for a source of inspiration, or does it sometimes come from within and like spontaneously?
I don't think there's any way to pick one. So everything that I do is written from lived experience. Like all of our songs, it's not just like I'm picking something out of thin air and writing about something. It's all stuff that's very close to me, but you can't help but be influenced by your friends and family and faith and movies that you watch and a basketball game that you played 7 years ago. Like everything that you do culminates in the type of creative output that you can produce. So I think that it will never not be both.
I mean, everything has meaning, it seems like, for you. And that's actually a really great way of, like, it seems like you can write a song almost about anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, I think to set out to try to write the heaviest song in the world is a fruitless endeavor. Like, it's probably already been done, and it's not going to really do a lot of good for a lot of people. So I just think if you have a platform, if someone allows you on their stage, you have to steward that wisely. So I don't just want to write cool music. I want to write music that's actually doing something for someone.
There you go. That's a good way of putting it. And I have 2 more questions for you. One thing I'm curious about is this is going to be the first time I see Prison live tonight. And I always find no matter how good the band is at executing their material live, seeing a band live is just a completely different experience than just simply listening to them. So for you, is there a similar energy that you put into the live presence versus like in the studio or a practice space, or is it a completely separate game and mind frame altogether?
Our first record, NGRI, we put it out, and I thought it sounded super engaging and visceral. And kids would see us on tour and say like, "Wow, I heard your record and I thought it was cool, but then I saw you guys live and I was like, no way, I didn't know it was like this." And at first I took it as a compliment, and then as we started gearing up for the studio this time around, I was like, man, it's not that our live show is better than our studio selves. It's that when we're in the studio, we're not translating our live show into that. So we sort of did it backwards this time. So for example, tracking vocals, I would do 3 full song takes. So like from start to finish of the song, and then we would just pick cuts from each of the 3, and if I didn't get it perfect in 3, then oh well. So there's like a lot of really imperfect, raw takes on the record that make it sound like more of a live experience, and we approach the production as like we wanted it to feel like someone was there with us. So hopefully it will have a lot more intimate of a feeling than our last record. But having people tell you you're a live band is a huge compliment. Yeah. But after a few years of hearing it, you're like, wow, what can we do to breathe that life into our record? Mm-hmm. You know?
Make a live album.
Yeah.
There you go. And the final question I want to ask you, always the hardest question for every musician to interview. That's why I love asking it. How do you know when a song is done?
So the way I look at writing music is picture like an archaeologist, and you discover a bone or something, and then you start brushing away all of this soot and ash and rubble and rocks, and then you know you're finished when you can see the full skeleton. So I don't picture writing music as adding something or building something. I view it as like removing everything that's on top of it. So this is going to sound really hippy-dippy, but I think that every song already exists.
Oh, John Lennon said that.
Your job is to figure out what's preventing it from existing. So you're trying to like uncover and find what the song is supposed to sound like. And I don't know how to explain it, but when we write, we don't think like, oh, let's add this here. We're like, oh, let's remove that silence that's over this part. Mm-hmm. You know? So I think you know when a song is done when you can see the full skeleton, when you're like, wow, this is the song that was supposed to exist and it hasn't yet, you know?
That was one of the best answers I've ever gotten for this. So good. I just interviewed Marcus from Shattered Sun and just said when the producer stops yelling at me. So before we go, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else you would like to promote in terms of tours, and when is the new record coming out?
The record comes out October 18th,
okay, which
is in a few weeks. And then we're doing a tour with Slaughter to Prevail and Body Snatcher and Orthodox that starts the day after Soulfly ends.
Oh.
And then we'll be home for a little bit. We have a couple more music videos coming out. Obviously, the record is coming out. And next year is going to be a busy one for us. So come see us live. If you are the type of person who sits in their room and listens to... I'm going to look at the camera. If you are the type of person who sits in your room and listens to Spotify by yourself at your computer, it's okay that you do that. But for one day next year, I challenge you to come to a Prison show and let me shake your head around and experience live music how it was supposed to be experienced.
Hell yeah. That was awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jay. Everybody, Jay of Prison, still alive, coming out October 18th. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.